This man at the grocery store accused me of stealing his copyrighted walking pattern and said I was case number 47 of intellectual property theft. Then I found out what happened to the woman who was case number 46 and why she never came back to shop on Sunday mornings. I was at the supermarket on a Sunday morning, mindlessly bopping to the store's Muzak version of Sweet Caroline. 5 minutes in, I'm in the cereal aisle when this guy, mid-50s, khakis pulled up to his ribcage, polo shirt tucked in so tight I could see his spleen, marches up to me. Let's call him Rhythm Cop. "Excuse me," he says, pointing at my feet like they'd just committed treason. "You're using my pattern." I look around, confused. "Sorry, what?" "My shopping rhythm. You stole it." I check my feet. They're just standing there, existing. "My rhythm?" He nods, dead serious. "I was walking at exactly 3 steps per second with a counterclockwise store navigation pattern. You've been copying me since aisle 3. "Sir, I'm just shopping?" He turns red. "No, you're theft shopping, with my proprietary movement sequence." Now I'm genuinely baffled. I haven't even noticed how I've been walking. My brain operates on autopilot in grocery stores. It's basically sleepwalking with a cart. "I think you might be mistaking me for someone else who walks." Wrong answer. Rhythm Cop pulls out his phone and shows me a fitness app. "See, I've been tracking my steps. 3 per second, 14% left lean on turns, 67-degree cart angle. You've been mimicking me exactly. How could you possibly know how I'm walking? I've been following you, taking notes." He produces a small notebook covered in timestamps and stick figure drawings. An employee walks by, teenage kid. His name tag says Marcus. Rhythm Cop flags him down like he's reporting a kidnapping. "This man is stealing my intellectual property," he announces. Marcus looks at me, then at Rhythm Cop, then at the notebook full of creepy surveillance sketches. "Sir, you're what now?" "My walking pattern. I've perfected it over 15 years of shopping here. It's the optimal route for maximum efficiency and minimal human interaction." Marcus turns to me. "Did you steal his walking?" "I literally just walked into the store like a normal person." "Exactly like me!" Rhythm Cop shouts. "That's theft." Marcus, who clearly doesn't get paid enough for this, sighs. "Sir, people can walk however they want. Not when it's my copyrighted technique." He shows us a crumpled paper. It's a homemade certificate written in crayon that says, "Official copyright, Gerald's Shop Walk." "Sir," I say, "you can't copyright walking." He doubles down. "I've been developing this technique since 2009. I have spreadsheets. Spreadsheets." That's when Rhythm Cop escalates. "I'm calling my lawyer," his lawyer, "over walking patterns." Marcus panics. "Sir, please don't," but Rhythm Cop is already dialing. I hear him say, "Bradley, it's happening again. Someone stole the Shop Walk trademark." Again? A woman walks by with her kids. She whispers, "That's Gerald. He tried to citizens arrest me last month for cart placement infractions." 20 minutes later, the store manager arrives with a police officer. Officer Madge already looks exhausted. "Someone reported intellectual property theft?" he asks, clearly hoping this is a prank. Rhythm Cop, launches into a presentation. He has charts, diagrams, a PowerPoint on his phone about shopping kinetics. "This man has been copying my exact movement pattern, which I've trademarked as Gerald's Shop Walk system." Madge stares at the crayon certificate, then at me, then back at Gerald. "Sir, you can't own how people walk." "I have documentation." Gerald produces a binder. It's 3 inches thick. The cover says, "Evidence of walk theft, case number 47, case 47. The officer turns to me. "Just keep shopping however you want." Then to Gerald, "Maybe find a hobby." "This is my hobby!" Gerald screams. As Madge leaves, Gerald starts aggressively demonstrating his correct walking pattern to other shoppers. It looks like a robot having a stroke. I finish my shopping in peace, deliberately walking in the most chaotic pattern possible, zigzagging, moonwalking past the dairy, doing a little skip by the frozen foods. At checkout, Gerald's behind me in line. He's visibly twitching, stopwatch in hand. 7 steps per second, he mutters. Absolute anarchy, no discipline, no form. And I was ready myself, was ready to jump ship and run, but I couldn't, because first, I had to ruin his life. I walked out of that store with my mind racing. Gerald's face, twisted with rage over something as ridiculous as walking patterns, kept replaying in my head. The way he'd clutched that crayon certificate like it was a sacred document. The binder labeled case number 47. This wasn't just some random encounter with an eccentric person. This was systematic. In the parking lot, I spotted Gerald's van parked 3 spaces from mine. The back doors were slightly open, and through the gap, I could see stacks of notebooks arranged in meticulous rows. He was loading more into a milk crate when one slipped from his grasp and fell onto the asphalt. The cover, written in the same careful handwriting as his surveillance notes, read, "Martha, resolved." My blood ran cold. Gerald snatched up the notebook and shoved it back into the crate, but not before I caught a glimpse of a photo paperclipped to the inside cover. A woman, maybe early 30s, standing in what looked like the same supermarket we'd just left. I pretended to fumble with my keys as Gerald approached my car. He positioned himself between me and my driver's door, arms crossed over his chest. Up close, I could see the veins in his neck pulsing. "You think this is over?" His voice had dropped to a whisper, but somehow that made it worse. "You deliberately mocked my system in there. The zigzagging, the moonwalking. You turned my life's work into a joke." I tried to step around him, but he matched my movement. "Gerald, I need to leave. Not until you sign this. He produced a crumpled paper from his pocket. At the top, in the same crayon as his copyright certificate, it read, "Cease and desist, shop walk violations." His hand trembled as he held it out, not from fear, from rage. That's when I noticed the missing person flyer taped to a nearby light pole. Martha Chen, last seen 6 months ago, at this supermarket. The photo matched the one in Gerald's notebook. "I'm not signing anything," I said, louder than necessary. A woman loading groceries 2 cars over glanced our way. Gerald's trembling intensified. "You will sign it, or I'll document every single step you take, every store you enter, every pattern you steal." The woman had stopped loading her groceries entirely now, phone in hand. "Is there a problem here?" A new voice. Dimitri, according to his security badge. Store security, built like someone who'd seen enough parking lot confrontations to know when one was about to escalate. Gerald's whole demeanor shifted. The trembling stopped, his face smoothed into something almost pleasant. "No problem at all. Just discussing shopping techniques with a fellow enthusiast." Dimitri looked at me. I shook my head slightly. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from this customer's vehicle." Gerald backed up exactly 3 steps. I counted them. He probably did too. "Dimitri," Gerald said, and something passed between them. A look I couldn't quite read. "You know how seriously I take my system. 15 years of development, 15 years of perfection, and now everyone thinks they can just take it. That's nice, Gerald. Move along." Gerald's pleasant mask slipped for just a second. "Like Martha took it?" Dimitri went rigid. "She moved away," Dimitri said quickly. "Too quickly. 6 months ago. Remember? You told me she moved away suddenly." "Did I?" Gerald smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Sometimes I forget the details. So many cases, so many thieves." He walked back to his van, loaded the last crate, and drove away, but not before making eye contact with me one last time through his side mirror. Dimitri waited until the van disappeared around the corner before speaking. "You should shop somewhere else for a while. What happened to Martha Chen?" His face closed off. "Like I said, she moved away, suddenly." He paused, then added quietly, right after Gerald's notebook started getting specific. "I drove home in a daze. The moment I got inside, I opened my laptop and searched for Martha Chen. Her Facebook page popped up immediately. Smiling woman, same as the photo on the flyer. Her last post was from 6 months ago, a mundane update about trying a new recipe. The comments below it started normal, then grew increasingly concerned. "Martha, are you okay? Has anyone heard from her? Martha, please call me." Her Instagram told the same story. Active posts, then nothing. The last photo showed her at what looked like a farmer's market, holding up a bunch of carrots. The caption read, "Sunday morning shopping. Same time, same place, same weird guy watching me." My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe accept. "You're home." Gerald's voice, not a question. My throat went dry. "How did you get this number?" "Same way I document walking patterns. Observation, documentation, analysis." A pause. "I have video of your shopping trip today. Every step, every violation. Would you like to see?" "Gerald, this needs to stop. Meet me tomorrow, noon, the coffee shop on 5th Street. We'll discuss terms." "Terms for what?" "Your surrender." The line went dead. I set the phone down with shaking hands. Through my living room window, I could see the street outside. No sign of Gerald's van. But that didn't mean anything. He'd been following me in the store for who knows how long before making his move. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was watering her plants on the porch next door. I stepped outside. "Everything all right, dear?" she asked. "You look pale." "Mrs. Patterson, have you noticed any strange vehicles around here lately? Maybe a van?" She set down her watering can. "Now that you mention it, there was a van parked across the street a few nights ago. Gerald actually has a crayon copyright certificate for walking that he carries around like it's official paperwork, and Marcus, the teenage employee, has to deal with this nonsense for minimum wage while pretending it's a real complaint about intellectual property theft. Around 3 a.m., I only noticed because Whiskers was fussing, and I got up to check on him. The van just sat there for about an hour, then drove off." "What color was it?" "White. One of those cargo vans." "Why?" I forced a smile. "Probably nothing." "Thanks, but it wasn't nothing. Gerald knew where I lived. He'd been watching my house, documenting my patterns even here. That night, I barely slept. Every car that passed made me jump. Every shadow could be Gerald with his notebook, sketching my sleep patterns or whatever madness he'd moved on to. The next morning, I called my sister Amy. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital and had a good head for dealing with difficult people. "You need to file a police report," she said immediately after I explained. "And say what? A man is mad that I walk like him? He's stalking you. He called you at home. He's been watching your house. The police already think he's harmless." Officer Madge basically laughed it off. Amy sighed. "Then document everything. Keep records. And whatever you do, don't meet him alone." But I had to meet him. I needed to know what happened to Martha Chen. The coffee shop on 5th Street was busy enough that I felt safe. I chose a table near the window in full view of the street. Gerald arrived exactly at noon, carrying a briefcase that looked like it had survived several decades. He sat down without ordering anything and opened the briefcase. Inside were more notebooks, a tablet, and what looked like printed screenshots. "I've been reasonable," he began, pulling out a laminated chart. "I've tried to educate people about proper shopping techniques, but your mockery yesterday was the final straw." "Gerald, I wasn't mocking anything. I was just trying to leave." He slid a paper across the table. "This is a settlement offer. You agree to shop at different times than me, use a different store, and publicly apologize for theft of intellectual property. In return, I don't pursue legal action." The barista barista behind the counter kept glancing our way. I caught her eye and she mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded slightly, then looked back at Gerald. "How did you know my name?" "I never told you my name." His eye twitched. "Research. Like you researched Martha Chen?" The coffee shop seemed to get quieter. Gerald's hands stilled on his papers. "Martha was a thief, like you. She copied my patterns for months. I tried to educate her, but she was resistant. Where is she now?" "How should I know?" "She moved away, probably stealing someone else's techniques in another state." He leaned forward, and I could smell something sour on his breath. "But we're not here to talk about past cases. We're here to talk about you. I'm not signing anything." His face flushed. "Then you'll face the consequences. I have 17 years of development in my system. 17 years of perfection. Do you think you're the first to try to steal it? You're case number 47. The other 46 all learned their lesson eventually. Like Martha learned hers?" Gerald stood abruptly, papers scattering. Several customers turned to stare. "Martha got what she deserved," he hissed. "She thought she could shop however she wanted, thought the rules didn't apply to her, but I showed her. I handled that situation permanently." The barista had her phone out now, clearly ready to call for help. Gerald seemed to realize he'd said too much. He gathered his papers hastily, shoving them back into the briefcase. "You have 24 hours to reconsider," he said. "After that, I escalate to phase 2. He left, but not before taking several photos of me with his phone. The barista came over immediately. "That guy's been banned from here twice already. He keeps coming back with different people, always with those weird papers. Should I call the police?" "What happened to the other people he brought here?" She shrugged. "They usually just leave looking freaked out. Except," she paused, "there was this woman about 6 months ago. Martha something. She seemed really scared. Haven't seen her since." My hands were shaking as I drove to Amy's apartment. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside. "He basically admitted he did something to her," I said. "This Martha Chen. She's been missing for 6 months, and he said he handled the situation permanently." Amy paced her small living room. "We need to find out more about Martha. Did she have family? Friends? Someone must be looking for her. There's a missing person flyer at the supermarket. That's all I know. I might be able to help." Amy grabbed her laptop. "If she ever came to the hospital, there might be records. Not that I can share them, but..." She typed rapidly. "Oh my God. What?" "Martha Chen. She came to the ER 3 times in the 2 months before she disappeared. Each time for minor injuries. A sprained ankle, a twisted knee, bruised ribs from a fall. Walking injuries?" Amy nodded grimly. "She told the attending nurse she was just clumsy. But the pattern." Gerald was escalating. "We need to find her friends, family, anyone who knew her." I pulled out my phone and went back to Martha's Facebook page. Most of the concerned comments were from people with generic profiles, but one stood out. Sarah Martinez. Her profile showed she worked at a local bookstore, and her photos included several with Martha. "I know that bookstore," Amy said. "It's downtown. We should go talk to her." "What if Gerald's watching? Then we document that too. He can't watch both of us all the time." But as we left Amy's apartment, I noticed a white van parked across the street. It pulled out into traffic 3 cars behind us. Gerald wasn't just watching, he was following. The bookstore was quiet when we arrived. Sarah Martinez stood behind the counter, and her face went pale when I showed her Martha's photo on my phone. "You know her," I said. It wasn't a question. Sarah glanced around the empty store, then nodded. "We were friends, best friends, until she disappeared. We need to know what happened. There's this man, Gerald, the walking guy." Sarah's voice was flat. "She told me about him. He was obsessed with her shopping patterns, said she was stealing his technique." "Did she take it seriously?" "Not at first. She thought it was funny. This weird guy with his notebooks and his charts. But then," Sarah pulled out her own phone, scrolling through messages. "Look at this. The last text she sent me." I read it, my blood running cold. "That weird guy from the store is escalating. He knows where I live. I'm scared, Sarah. If something happens to me, tell the police about Gerald." "Did you? Tell the police?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I tried, but all I had was a first name and a story about walking patterns. They said without evidence of a crime, there was nothing they could do. And then days passed, and Martha never came home, and by then, the trail was cold." "We have evidence now," Amy said. "He's doing the same thing to my sister, following her, threatening her." Sarah grabbed my arm. "Don't let him escalate." Martha waited too long. She kept thinking he was just a harmless weirdo, but the last time I saw her, she was terrified, said she was going to confront him, get him to leave her alone once and for all. When was that? The day before she disappeared. She was going to meet him at the supermarket, their usual Sunday morning. She said she had a plan to make him stop, but Martha never got to execute her plan. Whatever happened that Sunday morning 6 months ago, she never came home. As we left the bookstore, I spotted the white van again, parked at a meter down the street. This time, I walked straight toward it. Amy grabbed my arm, but I shook her off. The van pulled away before I could reach it, but not before I saw Gerald's face in the driver's seat. He wasn't even trying to hide anymore. That night, I went through Martha's social media again, looking for any clue I'd missed. Her second-to-last Facebook post caught my eye. "To the creepy guy who keeps following me at the store, I see you. I've documented everything. Back off." The comments below were supportive, but naive. "Block him. Report him to store management. Get a restraining order." But Martha had tried to handle it herself, and now she was gone. My phone rang. "Amy, I found something," she said without preamble. I couldn't stop thinking about those ER visits, so I did some digging. The last time Martha came in, she wasn't alone. The intake form lists an emergency contact. Someone drove her there. "Who?" "Gerald Patterson. He's listed as a friend who witnessed her fall." My stomach dropped. "He took her her to the hospital? It gets worse. The nurse's notes mentioned that Martha seemed anxious, kept looking at Gerald, but insisted she was fine. She declined to file any kind of report. Gerald had been there, controlling the narrative, making sure Martha didn't tell anyone what really happened. We need to go to the police with this, Amy said, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. A name on a form, a worried friend, a missing woman who'd had some accidents. Without something concrete, we had nothing. That's when I remembered the notebook. Martha, resolved. Whatever was in that notebook might be the evidence we needed, and I knew exactly where Gerald kept them. The next morning brought an itemized bill slipped under my door. Gerald had documented my entire week. Gym visits at 6:47 a.m., coffee runs at 8:23 a.m., even my jogging route with timestamps and stride measurements. Photos taken from inside the gym showed me on the treadmill. My hands shook as I read the invoice demanding payment for unauthorized use of proprietary movement patterns. I recognized this escalation pattern from a documentary I'd watched about stalking cases. The obsessive documentation, the gradual boundary violations, the twisted logic that made victims responsible for their own harassment. Gerald was following a predictable but dangerous trajectory. The way he's documenting every single moment of her life down to her stride measurements is absolutely bone-chilling. Amy arrived within minutes of my panicked call. She studied the photos, noting angles that suggested Gerald had either hidden cameras or spent hours inside the gym watching me. We decided to visit Dimitri at the store, hoping his earlier discomfort might mean he knew more than he'd admitted. The security office smelled like stale coffee and fear. Dimitri's hands trembled as he closed the door behind us. He checked the hallway twice before speaking in a rushed whisper. 6 months ago, Gerald had asked him to help move a car, said the owner was too hammered to drive. Dimitri had driven Martha's sedan to a lot across town, while Gerald followed in his van. Only later did Dimitri realize Martha never picked up her car. When he asked, Gerald said she'd decided to leave town permanently. The worst part came next. Dimitri still had Martha's car keys. Gerald had told him to destroy them, but something made Dimitri hide them instead. He pulled them from a drawer, house keys still attached, a small gym membership tag dangling from the ring, evidence that Martha hadn't left voluntarily. My mother called while we were processing this revelation. She gushed about her wonderful new friend from the senior center who'd offered to take her shopping. My blood froze when she said his name. Gerald. He'd been charming, helpful, especially interested when she mentioned her daughter who shopped at the same store. I tried warning her, but she dismissed my concerns. Gerald seemed so nice, so particular about doing things properly. That afternoon, I sat in my car recording Gerald at the store entrance. My phone captured him muttering to himself, something about teaching another person proper respect for patterns. His notebook never left his hand as he tracked each customer entering and leaving. The police arrived at my apartment that evening. Gerald had filed a harassment complaint, claiming I'd been following him and disrupting his shopping routine. The officer seemed uninterested in my counter evidence, suggested I simply shop elsewhere to avoid conflict. The system that should have protected victims was being weaponized by the perpetrator. Marcus found me in the diner the next morning, sliding into the booth with visible anxiety. He rolled up his sleeve to show a bruise on his forearm. Gerald had grabbed him after learning Marcus had spoken to me, accused him of betraying the system. The teenager was scared but angry enough to help. He confirmed Gerald paid several employees to report on specific shoppers, particularly women who shopped alone on Sunday mornings. Late that night, I searched Gerald's trash. Among coffee grounds and food waste, I found torn notebook pages. Most were too damaged to read, but one partially burned page showed clear writing. Phase 3, complete, M.C. Compliance achieved. Martha's initials. Phase 3 of what? Public records revealed Gerald's divorce 5 years ago. I tracked down his ex-wife Laura through her workplace, a dental office across town. She agreed to meet, but only in public, only during daylight. Her warning came immediately. Gerald had made her life hell with his rules, his patterns, his obsessive need for control. She'd escaped, but it had taken years and most of her savings. She urged me to get away before it was too late. I maintained my normal routine despite everything, documenting Gerald's behavior while he documented mine. Amy noticed my strange calmness, but I'd realized something important. Gerald thrived on causing fear and disruption. My refusal to change my patterns enraged him more than any confrontation could. His walking patent was set to expire next month, according to the date on his homemade certificate. This explained his increasing urgency, his desperate need to establish ownership before losing his imaginary claim. The approaching deadline made him sloppy, more likely to make mistakes. Sarah called with shaking voice. Martha's journal had been in her apartment all along, hidden because Sarah couldn't bear to read it. Now she trusted me enough to share it. The pages detailed months of escalation, Gerald appearing everywhere Martha went, leaving notes on her car, calling her workplace. The final entry mentioned planning to get a restraining order. She never got the chance. Gerald's behavior grew more erratic as his patent expiration approached. He staked out my house openly now, van parked across the street for hours. Neighbors started noticing, commenting on the strange man who sat there taking notes. The community awareness both helped and heightened the danger. A public meltdown meltdown at the pharmacy exposed Gerald's true nature to dozens of witnesses. He screamed at an elderly woman about walking violations, grabbed her cart to demonstrate proper technique. The pharmacist called Adult Protective Services, while customers recorded the incident on their phones. Gerald's mask of reasonableness was slipping. Local social media groups began sharing warnings about the walking pattern guy. Parents advised each other to avoid him. Store employees shared stories of his harassment. The collective documentation painted a clear picture of escalating dangerous behavior that authorities had ignored. My mother finally understood the danger when Gerald insisted on driving her to a specific store, the same one Martha had frequented. His questions about my shopping habits, his insistence on teaching her the proper patterns, his barely controlled anger when she mentioned I'd warned her about him. She cut contact immediately, joined the growing network of people watching out for each other. 5 of Gerald's targets met at the community center to share experiences. We discovered he'd filed similar complaints against each of us, always claiming intellectual property theft. His patterns were consistent: identify solitary shoppers, document their routines, escalate harassment, force compliance or departure. Martha had been the only one who'd completely disappeared. Gerald attempted infiltrating our support group through a fake social media profile, but his writing style and obsessive focus on walking patterns immediately gave him away. We blocked him, but not before documenting his attempts to gather information about our meetings. The pharmacist became an unexpected ally after witnessing Gerald's public meltdown. She'd seen him harassing other customers for months, but hadn't realized the scope until we shared our documentation. She provided security footage of multiple incidents, building our evidence cache. Gerald's paid informants started refusing his money. Marcus spread word among store employees about the threats and violence. Even those who'd taken Gerald's cash began to question his version of events. His network of enablers was crumbling. The accumulated evidence made Martha's fate undeniable. Gerald's own documentation, meant to justify his harassment, instead revealed a pattern of escalating violence. His notebooks showed increasing frustration with Martha's refusal to comply. Darker language about teaching lessons and permanent solutions. Multiple parking violations led to Gerald's van being impounded. He'd been so focused on stalking victims that he'd ignored meters, blocked driveways, parked in handicapped spaces. Neighbors celebrated the temporary reprieve, though we knew he'd find other ways to continue his surveillance. Gerald approached my mother at the senior center one last time, trying to recruit her for testimony against pattern thieves. She stood firm, loudly telling him to stay away from her family. Other seniors joined her, forming a protective circle. Gerald retreated, but his expression promised this wasn't over. His job at a local accounting firm ended when employers learned about his stalking behavior. Co-workers expressed relief, sharing stories of his attempts to control their walking patterns in the office. His obsession had infected every aspect of his life, ultimately costing him his livelihood. Support group members pledged to watch out for each other, sharing schedules to ensure no one shopped alone. We created a communication system, checking in regularly, documenting any Gerald sightings. The community he'd terrorized was becoming stronger through connection. Local news picked up the story after multiple complaints about the shopping pattern stalker. Gerald's face appeared on evening broadcasts, reporters interviewing victims who felt safe speaking out collectively. He'd wanted recognition for his system. Instead, he became a cautionary tale about harassment. I presented timelines showing Gerald's escalation patterns to anyone who would listen. The progression from documentation to harassment to violence was undeniable when laid out chronologically. Even skeptics couldn't dismiss the clear pattern of predatory behavior. The breakthrough came through his ex-wife's tip about a storage unit Gerald had maintained since their divorce. She'd remembered him spending hours there, returning home with stacks of notebooks. If he'd kept records of all his victims, evidence might be waiting in that metal box. The storage unit facility sat on the edge of town, rows of orange doors stretching into the darkness. Laura had given me the unit number and her old access code, warning that Gerald might have changed it. But when I punched in the numbers, the gate rolled open with a mechanical groan. Unit 47. Of course it would be number 47. The padlock hung loose, as if Gerald had visited recently. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered to life, revealing walls lined with metal shelving. Hundreds of notebooks, each labeled with a name and status. Some marked resolved, others in progress, a few labeled abandoned, moved. I found Martha's section easily. 3 notebooks chronicling 6 months of surveillance. The final pages made my stomach turn. Detailed plans for Phase 4, permanent resolution. Maps of the store's parking lot, renovation schedules, notes about which areas would be repaved when. Gerald's storage unit reads like the world's worst library. Hundreds of notebooks filed under people I've stalked instead of fiction or self-help. Phase 4, being permanent resolution, definitely isn't about customer service improvements at the supermarket. The last entry, dated the day she disappeared, simply read, "Implementation successful. Case closed." My phone buzzed. Amy, warning that Gerald had been seen heading toward the storage facility. I grabbed Martha's notebooks and several others marked resolved, shoving them into my backpack. Through the unit's small window, I spotted headlights turning into the lot. The back exit led to an alley behind the facility. I sprinted to my car, parked 2 blocks away as Amy had suggested. Gerald's van passed me going the opposite direction, his face illuminated by streetlights, expression murderous. Sarah's apartment became our temporary headquarters. She spread Martha's notebooks across her coffee table, while Amy documented everything with her phone. The evidence was overwhelming. Gerald hadn't just stalked Martha, he'd systematically broken her down. Photos showed her looking increasingly haggard. Notes detailed how he'd followed her to work, to friends' houses, to medical appointments. But it was Martha's own notebook that provided the breakthrough. Hidden in the storage unit, she'd been documenting Gerald's harassment too, building her own case. Her final entry mentioned meeting him at the store to demand he stop. She'd planned to record the conversation, had backup waiting in the parking lot, but something had gone wrong. The next morning, Gerald appeared at my mother's house while I was visiting. He pounded on the door, demanding the return of his property. My mother called 911 while I watched through the peephole as Gerald paced the porch, muttering about thieves and violations. When sirens approached, he fled. The police took our evidence this time. Martha's notebooks, combined with Gerald's own documentation of his plans, created an undeniable paper trail. The detective assigned to the case, a woman named Catherine who'd worked missing persons for years, recognized the escalation pattern immediately. That night, my security system alerted me to motion in the backyard. Gerald stood at my back gate, bolt cutters in hand, but he wasn't alone. Dimitri was with him, and they appeared to be arguing. Through the camera's audio, I heard Dimitri pleading with Gerald to stop, saying he couldn't be part of this anymore. Gerald shoved Dimitri aside and cut through the gate's lock. I'd already called 911, but I knew they wouldn't arrive in time. Amy and I barricaded ourselves in the bathroom while Gerald ransacked my house, searching for his notebooks. The sound of breaking glass and overturned furniture filled the air. When police arrived, they found Gerald in my living room, surrounded by torn cushions and scattered papers. He'd brought some of his notebooks with him, apparently planning to plant evidence of my theft. Instead, he'd provided more proof of his obsession. The arrest didn't stop him. From jail, Gerald sent letters to everyone in our support group, demanding we return his intellectual property. He filed complaints with store management, the city council, even the state attorney general. Each rambling document provided more evidence of his deteriorating mental state. Catherine, the detective, discovered something crucial in the store's old security footage. The parking lot cameras had been replaced during the renovation, but the old files were still archived. She found footage from Martha's last morning at the store. It showed her arriving, Gerald confronting her, and then both walking toward the area under construction. Only Gerald returned to his van. The construction company's records showed that section of parking lot was poured with new concrete that same afternoon. Gerald had been seen helping direct traffic around the work area, unusually helpful according to the workers. They'd thought nothing of it at the time. Our support group met with Martha's family to share what we'd learned. Her parents had never believed she'd simply left town. Now they had answers, terrible as they were. Sarah held Martha's mother as she cried, while Martha's father studied the notebooks with grim determination. Gerald's ex-wife Laura came forward with more evidence. During their marriage, he'd forced her to document her daily movements, punishing any deviation from established patterns. She'd kept some of his old notebooks, showing the obsession had started years before his divorce. The walking patent was just his latest fixation. The community rallied in unexpected ways. Store employees who'd taken Gerald's money pooled together to create a fund for Martha's family. The senior center banned him permanently after multiple members reported his attempts to recruit them. Even the coffee shop barista testified about the numerous times she'd seen Gerald intimidating people. During a preliminary hearing, Gerald represented himself. He brought charts and diagrams, trying to explain his system to the judge. His complete disconnect from reality was obvious, as he insisted Martha had violated his patents and deserved consequences. The judge ordered a psychiatric evaluation. Dimitri finally told the complete truth. The night Martha disappeared, Gerald had called him, frantic, said there'd been an accident, that Martha had fallen during their confrontation. By the time Dimitri arrived, Gerald had already moved her. Dimitri helped clean up, terrified of being implicated. He'd lived with the guilt for 6 months. The parking lot excavation began on a gray Tuesday morning. Our support group stood with Martha's family as investigators carefully removed sections of concrete. Gerald watched from his cell via video link, required to be present for the search. His composure finally cracked when they found her. Martha had been carrying a small recorder in her pocket. Though damaged, technicians recovered partial audio. Her voice, calm but firm, telling Gerald she had documented everything. His response, escalating from demands to threats to the sound of a struggle, then silence. The trial moved quickly. Gerald's own notebooks provided exhaustive evidence of premeditation. His testimony, rambling about patent violations and proper walking techniques, only reinforced his guilt. When the verdict came, he showed no emotion, just scribbled notes about filing an appeal based on intellectual property law. Martha's family held a proper memorial service. Hundreds attended, many sharing stories of their own encounters with Gerald. The community that he'd tried to control through fear came together in grief and solidarity. Sarah read from Martha's journal, her words about refusing refusing to be intimidated, taking on new meaning. The store implemented new security measures and training for employees about recognizing stalking behavior. Marcus led workshops for his co-workers, teaching them warning signs he wished he'd recognized earlier. The changes came too late for Martha, but might protect others. My mother became an advocate at the senior center, teaching her peers about predatory behavior disguised as helpfulness. She shared her experience with Gerald, how his interest in her had really been about accessing me. Her presentations drew large crowds, elderly people eager to protect themselves and their families. Gerald's sentencing brought no satisfaction, just a sense of ending, life without parole for murder, plus additional years for stalking and harassment. He used his statement to lecture the court about walking patterns. Still unable to comprehend his crimes, Martha's father walked out rather than listen. The storage unit revealed more victims, 17 people over 8 years who'd been stalked and harassed. Most had moved away or changed their routines. All had stories of escalating intimidation. Catherine worked to contact each one, building cases for additional charges. Our support group evolved into a community watch program. We partnered with local law enforcement to create resources for stalking victims. The walking pattern obsession had been unique to Gerald, but the escalation patterns were depressingly common. We could help others recognize the danger signs. Amy and I grew closer through the ordeal. She'd stood by me when things got dangerous, using her medical knowledge to document injuries and her calm presence to keep me grounded. We started taking self-defense classes together, channeling our experience into something positive. The store where it all started became a different place. Employees looked out for each other and customers. The Sunday morning shopping crowd, once Gerald's hunting ground, became a community of people who checked on each other. His legacy of fear transformed into one of mutual support. I returned to my normal shopping routine, but nothing felt the same. Every step carried weight, knowing Martha had walked these same aisles, fought for her right to exist without harassment. Her courage in documenting Gerald's behavior had ultimately exposed him, even after her death. 6 months after Gerald's conviction, I stood in the cereal aisle where it all began. No one monitored my walking pattern or documented my movements. I could shop in peace, something Martha had died defending. The freedom felt both ordinary and precious. The Community Watch program expanded to 3 neighboring towns. We trained volunteers to recognize stalking behaviors, provided resources for victims, and worked with law enforcement to take reports seriously. Martha's name became synonymous with the importance of believing victims before it's too late. I kept one of Gerald's notebooks as a reminder, not of his twisted system, but of how seemingly harmless eccentricity can mask dangerous obsession. The meticulous documentation that he'd thought proved his ownership instead revealed his pathology. His own hand had written the evidence that convicted him. On Sunday mornings now, I shop with purpose. Each step is mine to take, each pattern mine to choose. Gerald sits in a cell, still convinced the world stole his invention, but Martha's memory lives in every person who shops freely, walks safely, and refuses to let fear dictate their movements. Her resistance outlasted his obsession, and in the end, that's the only pattern that matters. I hope you have a wonderful day filled with much happier things than creepy storage units. I will see you in the next one.